Now I'm going to show you a little bit of a difference between these two tools and how I prefer to have the settings set up for them. So let's say we have an opacity of 100%. Okay, so what that means is with the clone stamp now, an opacity of 100%, and I mark my point, and then I come up here and I clone. Now that is going to be a 100% pixel for pixel match other than the feathering that comes off the soft edge. Okay, but the center is 100% match. However, if we were going to, let's say, drop this down to 20% opacity and do the same thing, notice it has covered it, but not completely. You actually have to go over it a couple times before it starts filling in that gap. Well, that seems like extra work, so why would you want to do that? Well, one example would be down here under her eyes. So if I was to take this brush at 100% opacity and do this, well, what's going to happen? It completely covers what was there. Well, that actually looks fake, right? Because she should have some shape under her eyes. However, all women like to look young and pretty. So what we actually want to do is diminish it, soften it, but not completely remove it. So in that case, if we make that 20%, we mark a point, we can actually go back and forth a couple times and very softly remove those creases, whether it be wrinkles on someone's face or on their pants or something like that. It'll just give you a better look. If you find that you have some odd repeating pattern or something, you can go to the eraser, change the opacity maybe on the eraser. Well, what's happening? Well, we're back to the background layer. I don't know at what point I did that, but that's what happened instead of that extra layer. So now I just made a mess of things. So I'm just going to go back here, do this again. With the stamp, new layer, click and do this, and do it again. Take but a moment. Okay. Make the brush a little smaller, get in there a little tighter. Also notice I move around a lot. You know, you just want to not get locked into being too close and make an overwork a section by moving around. That stops me from overworking something. But in general, you can see the before and the after. It's not completely removed, it's only partially removed. So like what I was about to say was with the eraser at 20%, I can come back a little bit. Maybe I did a little too heavy-handed. I could just give it a couple swipes, and there we go. Soften, not removed. And it looks a lot better that way. Going back to the brush, or at that point, and just kind of work my way around. You get the general idea. So now that was working with opacity. We have some Wacom tablet, which is a pen tablet. We have some options for that. I'm not going to go into those. But I will talk about aligned. Now what align means is if I mark the point on her eye and I come over here and I do that, I come over here, I'm going to get her other eye, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to get her lips. That's because it is aligned. Okay? When I set my point, no matter where I go, it's going to follow the source and destination are going together. Okay? However, if I uncheck aligned, that means that I set the point, I come over here and I mark it. If I come over here, it's going back to the original point. They're not being aligned. They're going back to the source, which means I can keep doing this ad nauseum, and I'm always going to be picking up from that same point. So one of the ways that I separate the two tools, the cloning and the healing, is by using that aligned as a differentiator. So, for example, if I come over here with the clone stamp, I say aligned, which means, again, I set that point and I move that. Notice if I come straight over here, it's moving that crosshair with me. If I come over here, it moves that crosshair with me, and it moves that crosshair with me. No matter where I go, it's following along. Okay, that's one way that I say that this tool is going to behave in that fashion. And the reason for that is because I'm always going to be setting my new point when I'm on this tool. So I'm going to click that point, I'm going to fill that in. I'm going to click that point, and then I'm going to fill that in. Okay, I'm going to come over here, I'm going to set that point, and I'm going to fill that in. Okay, I'm constantly setting a point and moving in this case when I have the clone stamp selected. Okay, that's an intentional way of working. However, when I work with the healing brush, I have a line unchecked. So that means that when I set a point here on her forehead, which is just a general dead space, it allows me to very quickly move around her face without worrying about what I'm picking up, because I'm constantly, no matter where I go to, it's constantly going smack to the middle of her forehead. No matter where I go, it's always going to go back to that same point. So I find it easier to work that way, because then I can set a point and just move all over the place. And then I'll do it with the healing brush when I'm doing faces or other big dead areas like background here. I could use it for this. So as an example, I could set the point out here on one side of her head, come over here, and then do the completely other side of her head. Even though the color doesn't match exactly, it doesn't matter because the tool does a better job for me. If I find that it doesn't, like I can see a strange shape, then I'll have to go to the other tool, come back, and do it here. Or I could stay with the tool but set a new point just closer to where I'm actually working. Huh? See, using these two tools is not hard. It just takes a little bit of getting used to, separating, understanding a difference between the two tools. One's an exact mimic, the other one is interpretive, where sometimes it'll take the texture, sometimes it'll take the color, but I always find that it does what I want it to do. On some occasion where it doesn't, like when it was up here at the top, then you just pick the other tool and you keep going. Often I'm using the healing brush because it's quicker and easier, and then I'll jump to the clone stamp with a different opacity if I have to blend something a little bit better without completely removing it. And that's just kind of how I use it. I will leave current and below on both of them, and I will work on a completely separate layer. And as you've seen, this way I can erase and otherwise pick up mistakes and fix things that need to be fixed.